Our studio guest is joining me, and we got to meet a couple of weeks ago and chat a little bit about his business and his background. And I may have exaggerated it on the air just ever so slightly. Dr. Eric F. Jones is joining us in the studio, and I do tell people that he's got a background in family counseling and that he also practices holistic medicine. And sometimes the first one is definitely related to the second because you have to look at the overall picture of what people are eating, what their mental health is like, what their just general overall physical well-being is, because that can affect sometimes, well, their attitudes around the rest of the family, friends, and the workplace. But first of all, I want to say welcome to our program.
Thank you, Bill, and good morning.
Now you use tuning forks in your business, but that does not mean. And this is where I jumped off and I said you had a background in chiropractic as well, but that's a slight difference there between the two.
It's a traditional Chinese medicine technique that is in many ways similar to acupuncture, but it's actually acupressure, and it uses the vibrational uh, tones of each fork to create a different energy wave in the body to help with pain or uh, depression, anxiety, moods. It's a very interesting technique.
We were going to start out today talking a little bit about just when you made this point to me a couple of weeks ago when you said you were visiting another hospital and talking to some other doctors about what people eat and they were mentioning that some of those old ideas are still applicable today and they can work well with modern medicine, but your point being if people just would eat better and skip some of the processed foods, a lot of their troubles would go away.
Well, I love one of Mark Twain's statements, and it's so applicable to us today. His One of his famous statements is, "The ancients stole all our best ideas," and how that applies to us is the process of healing and taking care of our bodies has been a necessity for centuries. And the earth has provided things. It started out with learning how the plants produce medication. They learned to synthesize that medication. And now they're recognizing that there is value back in the plants and in the natural sources of medication. But for me, just as a marriage and family therapist, my observations over the last 27 years has been most people, when they come in with depression or anxiety or other affective disorders, have at the same time digestive issues, physical issues. And now there's tremendous research that indicates they are directly connected. Dr. Gershon at the Columbia University has uh, done some amazing research and identifies our digestive system as the enteric nervous system, and it is very directly connected. There's a highway of communication between the brain and the digestive system. And so it's not unusual to see that in most bipolar and depression,
Hmm.
anxiety patients, that they have constipation, diarrhea, irritable bowel syndromes, nausea. Those are very, very connected and related.
It's interesting you bring that up because I watched a documentary last night about Vince Lombardi, and he died, of course, from colon cancer, but some of that may have been related to ulcer issues and his diet, job stress. But as it turns out, I never knew this. He was also severely bipolar, and you wonder if that was connected to everything else.
The more we learn, our bodies are such a complicated organism. The more we discover we don't know. And we are blessed with technology now that can really look at and go deeper into the connections and the message sending. And we're finding definitely that what we put into our system affects how we perform.
Hmm.
I was before I got into the family psychology program, I was a computer uh, guy, but I didn't get off on that so much. But there was a principle that was really cool called GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. And Dr. Dannenberg, um, in his research, has identified that 90% of individuals with chronic illness, generally, it's a result of putting into our body what we shouldn't be eating or not putting into our body what ought to be there. And that's really what we're finding to be so true. And what I'm enjoying with many of my clients is that oftentimes making adjustments in our dietary patterns and routines will help produce a very positive response in our mental functioning,
Hmm. Hmm.
mental wellness.
We want to point out we're going to spend a few more minutes with the doctor. We've got a short break coming up. But in the meantime, for people quickly who'd like to know a little bit more, how do they reach the office?
They can call me on my cell at 731-7178, or currently at my office 733-7186. And I'll be glad to talk with them and give them information. Um,
And flexible, we should point out flexible hours for appointments too.
yes, I have flexible times on Friday afternoons, Saturday mornings are available for clients, which really helps some of the families, especially if they're in outer townships.
Sure. Yeah, if they're coming in from Owyhee County or somewhere distant,
Uh-huh.
and they've got a little bit of a drive in front of them. We've got more coming up with Dr. Eric F. Jones. Just a couple of minutes. You're listening to Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX at newsradio1310.com. Dr. Eric F. Jones is joining us in studio this morning. It's coming up on 8:34. It's 52. Bill Colley with you as well on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And the doctor practices a holistic approach to medicine. And we're talking a little bit about that and just the general system check. And of course, it's great when you mentioned the computer background because that's how that works. It's one big system and you have to care for all of it. And you have something you call the 4 pillars of health that you remind your patients are critical.
Yeah, and I need to back up and again say when you use the term practice of medicine, it's not accurate. It's the practice of mental wellness and physical wellness.
Now, does the public really make that see a differential?
They may not. It's like the difference between a psychologist, social worker, counselor. There are
Right.
definite
But a
distinctions,
state regulator would.
but a state regulator would. And so just want to make it clear to the audience and to the other doctors who may be listening, go, oh, I'm going to call Dr. Jones. And yeah, it is a practice of mental wellness and physical wellness that I am embarking into.
Do you have time for a telephone call?
Yes.
We have a caller with us. You're on the air with Dr. Jones. Good morning.
Yes, Dr. Jones, I'm very, I understand that we need prescriptions and we need doctors, but you see, there's no common sense in it. To me, I've watched my friends, uh, older folks that I've known, they obediently take the prescriptions, and then there's a side effect, so they take another one. And I mean, I've had people telling me they're taking 17 prescriptions, and I'm saying to myself, you know, seriously, you're going to die from this. And what kind of a doctor would do this? And so my wife and I went back in history and we found out that at one time in America, every approach was, there was open mindedness. And then the industrialists decided to pigeonhole the deal. And the only thing that was, was farm up big pharmaceutical companies and control. And the doctors, you couldn't become a physician with the funding. I'm not describing this very well. Maybe you can do better. But you see, in the meantime, I see what I perceive as more and more unhealthiness because people are so obediently taking their prescriptions. I mean, I don't take anything, and I'm as healthy as a horse, and I can still feel like I'm 20s. And you see,
Well,
this is the thing. I'm going to hang up. I think you get this gist. I'll hang up.
we had a
Well,
similar conversation actually a couple of weeks ago.
yes, and thank you for the call. And let me just clarify, there's benefit in all aspects of the systems of care that are out there and available to us. But you bring up a point that's really important. Medicine began in the homeopathic arena. Dr. Hahnemann was one of the earlier practitioners of medicine, and his focus was learning on how to uh, identify the natural sources of remedies through plants. Uh, in our day and age, we have a great, without question, as you pointed out, a pharmaceutical approach, and the Western medical approach is medicine. And while that's valuable and effective in many areas, some areas, there's also alternative approaches that have been effective for thousands of years. And that's where I'm drawn to add an approach, an alternative to our health care our mental wellness, our digestive wellness, our physical wellness that incorporates the use of nature. I was with my eye surgeon, who's the director of eye surgery at University of Utah, Dr. Crandall, and I had an experience, and he indicated I had some pressure in my eyes, and I asked him, I said, "Would you mind if I used an herb to help reduce that pressure?" And he asked me, which was a surprise, "What herb would you use, Dr. Jones?" And I said, "I'd use eyebright." And he said, "That's the correct herb to use." And I was stunned because here's a renowned international researcher, the director of the University of Utah's eye research program. And I asked him, and he said, "Well, we started out getting medicines from the plants, and then we decided to move to synthesize those medicines. And now we've realized we have an opportunity to go back and return to the plants that really are the source. There's other things in the plants that we need to incorporate."
Well, we're going to have to ask you if you can stick around through another segment because we want to get to those four pillars.
Yes, the four pillars.
But what you just brought up, I have a friend, and he tells me he's in his mid 60s now. He said he's not on any prescription drugs, and he has not been. He said, and it's basically he's managed to keep his weight down. He doesn't drink alcohol. He eats only food from his garden or what he can buy, fresh produce and the like. Stays away from the processed foods, and he said it's his view that at his age he's got to do it if he wants to stay out of what he calls the system. And it reminds me very much of what I've heard from a lot of other people who've lived to be great old age and healthy while they're still at it.
Outside of our country, there are many populations who have a great number of centurions, and it's because of the way they live their lives and what they eat and consume. It's simple, it's natural, and it maintains the health and structure and function of our bodies. And so that process is really available, and the four pillars of health guide us down that path.
We'll get to that in the next segment of the program. I hope you
Okay.
don't have a 9 o'clock appointment.
Nope, I'm fine.
All right. It's coming up on 20 minutes at 9 o'clock. Dr. Eric F. Jones is in studio with us on Top Story this morning with Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. Joining me in the studio, Dr. Eric F. Jones, and we'll continue our conversation with him in just a moment. We're talking about overall well-being, and we'll get some details, too, on location of his office and the like, because I know there are people listening this morning who are thinking about how they can better live their lives, and this might be an excellent start. I do want to remind folks, the weather lately, Doctor and I were talking about the weather off air a few minutes ago, and of course he even pointed out, he said, it's really about your perspective. You can get used to looking at gray skies and you can see the beauty in it, but we will have some hotter weather coming. All right, maybe not in the next few days, but we do have to tell you, if you have an AC unit and you haven't kicked it on yet to test it, you might be sadly disappointed that first day it's 95 and if it's not working. So you may need repairs right now, or you'd like to avoid problems in the future. You need to call the pros at Ramsey Heating and Electric and make sure the job is done right the first time and set yourself up for a great summer. That means a summer where you're not sweating through it. See them at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley, or give them a call, 678-0459. Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they sell warm winters and cool summers. Ramsey Heating and Electric. We were having an off-air conversation about the great Jack LaLanne, who, when he died a few years ago, he was 96. And I mentioned I happened to see him on Fox one day on his 93rd birthday, and he was explaining about his exercise regime and regimen, I guess you'd call it, and he said, I haven't had a slice of cake since 1931. And the anchor, she said to him, "Oh, you must really like exercise." He said, "No, I hate it." She said, "Well, then why do you do it?" He said, "I wouldn't be here otherwise." There's something to be said about that.
It's one of the four pillars of health, and there's some simple practices, and I'll just share those. And if you want more information, don't hesitate to give me a call. First one is nutrient dense foods, and that goes back to eating whole foods. And what we know now, the color all the way through the vegetable, the fruit, provides far more flavonoids, antioxidants, all the things that help challenge the uh, toxins in our body, the free radicals. That's really important. Make sure those are in your diet. Number two is restorative sleep. And that's one of the big challenges in our population currently.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the leading contributors to most of the affective disorders. It's really important to learn how to get that deep sleep, and you can do that through a variety of ways. Um, if you learn the techniques. 3 is efficient exercise. This is where Jack LaLanne comes in. By the way, as a teen, I used to do the Jack LaLanne exercises in my
I
home.
can still
All you
remember the
needed was a
song too.
all you needed was a chair and an encyclopedia. But 30 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day of walking, just active exercise will maintain the movement of the lymph fluid, lymphatic system, and your heart rate, and it just makes a difference. Your endorphins and norepinephrines are released, and you just feel good. So that's really important. And the fourth pillar is to detox stressors out of your system. We are bombarded in our country from toxins, pesticides, chemicals. Our plastic world that's around us
Hmm.
really has an influence. The electronic microwaves that are in the air, all of these things affect us. The Fukushima, I probably said that name wrong, forgive
Close
me,
enough for me.
but the radiation that came over the northwestern part of the United States had an effect on us. And we don't realize how important it is to address those and that there are natural approaches to help remove those from our system, to keep the toxins and uh, bad influences, if you will, purged out and eliminated.
We have a caller with us. And caller, you're on the air with Dr. Eric F. Jones.
Hi. I had a question about with this natural approach, if it is possible to slowly get off of heavy medication for chemical imbalances, like if for children and teenagers and then into adulthood.
That's a good question.
That's a great question, and the answer is yes. And there is so much research now going on in very big universities, Columbia, Stanford, Harvard, in looking at how amino acids and omega 3s and other vitamins influence the body's capacity to regulate the moods, to regulate their anxieties, to calm their worries. We now know, as I mentioned earlier, that the digestive tract has a direct link to the brain. It's communicating. What does the brain need? And so our food system is the source of creating those chemicals. Serotonin, for example, 90% of the serotonin in our system is developed in the digestive tract, and 10% is regulated and managed in the brain. So it's really important to make sure our diet has adequate sources of that. And so the answer is yes, you can use supplemental forms in your diet and the food you eat that can elevate your mood management and, with your doctor's help, slowly titrate off. I would never say to someone starting well and just quit your medications. That's a high risk and not something you want to do. Your physician wants your wellness to happen just as much as I would, but it's also got to be wisely done, carefully done. Great
Okay,
question.
thank you.
Want to thank her much for the input. We have another caller with us, and we're coming up on 8:50. It's 52. Dr. Eric F. Jones in studio with us. Bill Colley with you too as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And you're next. You're on the air. Good morning.
Yes, I just have a question quickly. In the past, I've found sadly that Medicare will not cover your practice, so I've done what I can on my own. Would you tell me, is it possible that they have changed that attitude now?
That's a great question. A very excellent question. First of all, is in regards to Medicare, even marriage and family therapists and licensed professional counselors are not eligible to bill Medicare. So that is eliminated even for me as a practitioner in counseling. When it comes to adding the nutrition and things of that sort, if it was Medicaid, I can still implement those suggestions and recommendations on other approaches that I might use or choose to use, such as the acupressure with the tuning forks. Those are not covered by insurance, and you are correct. Those would end up having to come out of an individual's purse. Um, there's a lot of work nationwide working to get acceptance and approval across insurances for alternative medicines, but that has not happened as of yet.
There is an evolution though going on because we have seen in some areas of practices where there's been a change over the years and more acceptance, and it comes from the AMA and it comes from certain insurers, and sometimes it really is your insurance policy too as well.
That is correct, and what makes a big difference is the voice of the consumers. In our area, we're such a rural state. Some things are just not available, and there are holistic alternative practitioners
Hmm.
who have great capacity to aid and assist in the health and well-being of individuals, but don't have access to the insurance for, revenues. But speak up, share that with your insurance companies. There are, I think, I'm not sure on this, but my understanding is health savings accounts can be used for some of these alternative approaches.
It's your money, right?
It's your money, and you just keep your receipt in there, and it's a deduction in that fashion. So if you have that set up as part of your insurance premium, then you can access coverage for those services.
Now, we were talking off air about a story I read some years ago in, I think it was the New York Times Magazine, and a reporter went to a small town in the Dakotas. And of course, if you think Dakotas, you could think Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, really anywhere here in the Midwest to Mountain West. He went to very similar in that sense, but he went to this small town and he dropped by the local diner where it was filled with people who were in their 90s or past 100, all healthy, all eating at this local diner, not necessarily eating the worst food, but a lot of your hometown diners don't serve processed food. They serve, you can get a good meal there, home cooked meal. And he found that it was people who did a lot of physically stressful life work in their lives, but they didn't have a lot of mental stress. If you've got just one traffic light in town, there's not a lot of driving stress. I think about this story my brother told me. He moved to Los Angeles when he was a young man and lived there for a couple of years. And he said he used to have to drive the Ventura Freeway back and forth to work. And he said, you know what? If you break down, you don't get out of your vehicle because he said someone will run you down. And he said that job stress that he already had thrown in with the traffic stress and these other issues in his life and you're worried because he said at night there were police helicopters always flying over the neighborhood with spotlights because they were chasing someone down. He said it takes a toll on you. And when my father passed away 20 years ago, he came home to visit and spent a week back home at my sister's house. And I saw him one day and I said, "How are you doing?" And he said, "Well, the crickets keep me up at night." He wasn't used to that low key sort of lifestyle any longer. But there's something to be said about these people who are living in these rural communities who don't necessarily have all of those urban stressors, or they don't feel the need, I guess, to keep up. No pun here intended, but keep up with the Joneses.
That's just great. I don't keep up with the Joneses. The reality is, what you're describing is one of the key challenges in our culture. Stress is one of the most prominent factors to chronic illness, chronic mental illness, chronic sleep disturbances. It is a process that we need to learn to change. And the reality, those individuals in those small communities, they've developed a lifestyle. They're comfortable with it and they're healthy because of it. The truth of it is, we can also create that mentality and that lifestyle, even if it's in our own little environment in the home, knowing that if we step out into the community, we may be engaging in a stressful culture for a time being, but we look forward to returning to our little sanctuary. That's one of the important parts that I find important to help my clients learn is to create that insulation through their approach to thinking and to the way they feed their body. Remember, garbage in, garbage out. And what you described about that town, they had found a way to make sure they put in relaxed, calm, stress less relationships, practices. Physical exercise is a welcome stress to the body because it engages all the right kind of chemistry, and we feel good after it. So there is a need for certain kinds of physical activity, but we don't want that to become the mental stress that shuts our body down and interferes with our digestive processes and our way of interacting with people.
Got a couple of minutes to go. For people who don't know where your office is located, you're right here in Twin Falls.
That is correct. And right now, I do have two offices, one at 284 Martin Street, um, and then one at 206 Martin Street. And so, yes, so I'm accessible and really willing to work and help with people. That's what I look as my passion. That's going to be my um life process.
You got a Facebook page as well that you got up and running in the last month or so.
That is correct. Eric F. Jones, PhD, mental and physical wellness.
And people can take a look at that, and you'll have a lot of different examples and just some facts and figures that they can take a look at too.
That's correct. And I'm working to learn to post and blog on a daily basis. That's a whole new environment. It could have been a stress, but I've decided to just do my
Right? See, that's what my daughter was for, to help me through all of that. I don't think she knew that she came into the world for that reason, but that became her mission for a couple of years in my life. And we should point out your telephone number, too, for anyone who'd like to contact you.
731-7178. If I'm on the phone or involved with someone, please leave a message with your name and a time frame with a phone number, and I will get right back to you.
And a lot of good advice today. And as I say, we look forward to doing this again sometime soon. Things come up, and I love the first question we got from the first caller. And just, if sometimes you return to some basics. I had a deacon I knew from church. He lost 103 pounds, swore off all of the bad foods in his life and bad habits. And he said to me one day, he said, I don't have to take any of those prescription medicines anymore.
When I go places, even where I shop for food, the cashiers, a couple of them particularly, are on guard when I come in, because I always check if they've maintained their change in habit, and the Coke and the Pops have gone, and they have a bottle of water sitting on their register. So, yeah, I watch.
I want to thank the doctor for coming in today. Dr. Eric F. Jones joining us in studio. We're coming up on the 9 o'clock news in just a moment. Bill Colley with you on Top Story as well. On News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. News from Fox, and then one more hour of Top Story ahead, and then we're off for the weekend.